Hello and welcome to State of the Economy. Today we have with us Sitaram Yechury, leader of the CPM in Rajya Sabha as well as Politburo member of the CPM, who will talk to us about the state of the economy, the recent budget, and which way is the economy headed. He's one of the most, probably the most active articulator of the left position on political economy issues. Welcome to our show, Mr. Sitaram Yechury. You've seen Modi's pronouncements after he became PM to his own party members at various fora, and you've seen the budget. Can you give me an idea of what you think is Narendra Modi trying? My feeling is that he's carrying forward a whole lot of social welfare policies of the previous regime, even things like Manrega, which the left had, proposed during your first partnership with UPA. And he's also trying to boost big business. What cocktail is he attempting?
Well, I think, I would agree with you, but I think that's not the whole story. What I think Mr. Narendra Modi is trying to convey and what the budget has conveyed is that essentially there is a continuum in the economic policies in the country. And that continuum, the difference, if at all, and which I think was also the thrust of the entire election campaign that Mr. Modi conducted, the thrust was that here you have a Congress government that is paralyzed, that's not able to deliver, and I am a better deliverer.
Especially of public services.
So I'll carry forward the public services scheme, and not only that, he'll carry forward also the underlying philosophy of the economic policy direction. And that underlying philosophy is what has come out in the budget very sharply, and that is that reliance on seeking greater inflow of foreign capital and reliance on giving private capital in India a greater role through the PPP model. Now, this is how they want to augment the investable resources, which is precisely what Dr. Manmohan Singh was trying to do. But this augmenting of investable resources, I think that is where the weakness weakness with Dr. Manmohan Singh and Narendra Modi, the same weakness continues. And that is that the entire economic policy direction philosophy is rooted in one presumption, that increasing the funds available for investment per se will lead to a greater growth, and per se, therefore, will lead to greater employment generation and prosperity, etc., etc. Now, the drawback, both in Dr. Manmohan Singh's and in Narendra Modi's philosophy,
it was jobless growth.
Exactly. No, not merely jobless growth, but the point is greater investment is perfectly fine. It's good. But the point is that what is produced by that investment has to be consumed, no? Unless people are able to buy what is produced, there can be no growth, no profits, nothing will happen. So merely making investable funds available is not going to really kickstart the economy. Now you have a global situation, sluggish global economy. World trade is declining. Your exports are naturally declining, and you can't really expect the turnaround there very soon or immediately. So you have to, by force, rely entirely on your domestic market. Now, unless you increase the purchasing power in the hands of the people, it's not possible for you to really grow.
Essentially, you're saying that incomes have to be broad-based enough to guarantee future growth.
Absolutely. And instead, what are you doing? Public welfare measures, fine. Greater foreign inflows also, if you succeed. That's good. Greater private participation, okay. But people don't have money to buy. On the contrary, because in bringing in the entire question of fiscal discipline, you are trying to cut down on subsidies, which means increasing prices further, which is what is happening. And greater the inflation rate, the less the disposable income in the hands of people, even those who are earning. So net result is what? That you attract greater investable funds, invest, but the goods are not sold. So people stop investing, even though they have money. Where does that money go? It goes into speculation. You have real estate rising, you will have gold prices rising, you will have for Indian rupee value declining because savings are being done in foreign exchange.
So you're saying that if the if industrialization is not broad-based enough, you get these asset bubbles.
Absolutely. You get these asset bubbles which may create, one jump in the share prices, a track.
In fact, it's interesting you're saying this, Mr. Yechury, because one narrative is, which now people concede, is when India got, like other emerging markets, huge inflows between 2002 and 2008-9,
Right.
when you got 8.5% growth. One charge, as it were, against India is that India could not use all this money productively and did not create a broad-based
Precisely.
industrial framework, enough broad-based, enough to generate new employment, etc. And now people across the spectrum, left and right, both, they admit, like Arun Shourie some time ago was saying that although you had 8% growth between 2002 and 2010, but the employment absorption, which was supposed to be 10 million a year of new labor entering the market, it was less than a third of that. In fact, some say even 10-15% of, yeah.
Precisely.
So there's a structural problem. So how do you think, how does left analyze this?
You see,
You get 8% growth, but you don't add to organized employment.
I mean, that's what I was hinting at in my earlier reply. You see, you have this 8% growth, but that 8% growth is lopsided in the hands of just a few. So you have the creation of two Indias. You'll have the largest growth of, billionaires in US dollar terms. But you'll have the largest number of malnutrition children, the largest number of, impoverished people. No, both these coexist.
Also, a large number of subsistence employment. There's a data which shows that since 1991 until now, 100 million new employment created is entirely in the informal sector.
Correct.
A lot of self-employed within
Precisely. And what is happening today, if you look at the organized workforce in the country, it's less than 6%. 94% is in the unorganized sector, where it's basically survival. It's not really something of prosperity. So where is the structural problem? The structural problem is that those who have money are making more money. Those who do not have money are not finding avenues to make that money, so that they can be assets to the economy. Now, what we have been saying for donkey's years, let's say Stiglitz has now written a new book which has become an international bestseller, The Price of Inequality. The higher the levels of inequality, there's an economic price you're paying where your growth rates are lower. Now, what is the solution to this?
Yeah, what is the solution?
The solution to this, in my opinion, is that India requires, and it may sound strange coming from a communist, but what India requires is a New Deal.
A New Deal, yeah, okay.
What Roosevelt did for the US economy. That is that there's no dearth of resources in the country. You have to tap them, use them for public investment and build your much needed infrastructure.
This is it's very interesting what you're saying, because Roosevelt's election campaign was happy days are here again. Somewhat similar to Modi's election campaign. But Roosevelt, after coming to power, he used public investment as the main thrust, main lever to give employment. But I don't think Modi's strategy, although he says that Sarkari Khazana Garibon ke liye, and he's also saying that by 2022, every household will have a roof over its head, 24 hours water supply, 24 hours power, shiksha, suraksha. Do you see a Rooseveltian at least dream there?
You see, a dream maybe, but dreams, remember, are always an escape into the wonder world. You require a vision. You require a vision to realize that. And Roosevelt had that vision, which was also, theoretically, philosophically, a contribution of Keynes.
Exactly. It was Keynesian.
Keynesian. State intervention.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always accused in the parliament of the earlier finance minister would say, you're a Keynesian fundamentalist. I'd say I'd rather be a Keynesian fundamentalist than be a fiscal fundamentalist.
Yeah.
The point is, no economy, even by theory or practice, any economist worth his salt will tell you, without a deficit, the economy cannot grow.
Yeah.
Now, what manageable limits will you keep it? Internationally acceptable is a 3% deficit. Now, you have a situation where your tax foregone, according to the budget papers, is much larger than your fiscal deficit. Okay, the government says one half of that is in litigation, you can't recover that, etc. Forget that. Recover what is recoverable. You still have something like 3 lakh crores annually, which the government can use to build our infrastructure, which is woeful. And remember, all these civil engineering marvels in the US were all built at the time of the New Deal.
Even East Asia.
East Asia, and including Hitler's autobahns. He built them for the movement of his army, but that was the infrastructure that was built. So the point is, without state investment, it is not possible. And unfortunately, the Modi government slogan of "Achhe din aane wale hain," soon the people's slogan will be "Hamare purane din lauta do." I mean, they were better off because the dream that you have given people can be realizable only if this policy trajectory is changed. You continue the same policy trajectory and you ask people to believe that the dream can be realized, it's just not going to happen.
So you're saying that if this government explicitly comes up with a public investment vision,
Absolutely.
then you think things can go in a different direction?
Of course, and I think not only things can go in a different direction, but India will really then emerge as one of the emerging economies. Now look at your NSS data. Look at any data that's officially. Employment generation has fallen, like you correctly said, to even third or even a fourth of what it used to be a decade ago.
Or what is needed to
exactly.
provide employment with new people entering the market.
And you have these bubbles, stock market bubbles, which are just bubbles at the top. And remember, it was not a Marxist, but Keynes who said, who wrote, saying that finance capital is like a bubble on the lake. When it expands to cover the whole lake and it explodes, it carries all the muck from the bottom. And that is the problem with the bubbles. I mean, when they grow, it appears very hunky-dory. And is bound to burst because no balloon can be inflated to infinity. And that trajectory which this government is following, unfortunately, the situation will be worse because as time goes by, the same sort of policy direction, the result will be worse for the people.
But CPM has changed its position over the years on good foreign direct investment capital, right? Which is not fly by night.
Yeah, exactly. In the sense, remember, you raised a very correct point, but you said even when you had this 8% growth rate, but you really couldn't use that in productive assets.
Productive assets, yeah.
Why couldn't you use it? We always used to argue in the parliament. We said, you claim to have a record foreign exchange reserve. Now, you're not a miser. You don't keep the money under your bed and start counting every day. Why don't you use
CPM had asked for using
that?
Some of the
exactly.
reserves,
use those reserves and invest them.
We'll have a more detailed discussion on this. Please don't go away and keep watching RSTV. Welcome back to State of the Economy. We are talking to Sitaram Yechury, leader of CPM in Rajya Sabha. Mr. Yechury, you were rightly saying that CPM had earlier told the UPA government that they should use some of their reserves to build infrastructure for public investment, right? So, in some ways, what you had recommended has come true through an indirect way because we have contributed to this BRICS fund, which is precisely to be used as for infrastructure, right?
But remember, the reason why we couldn't use it when we were telling it, I mean, a reason which the Manmohan Singh government was not explicit enough to tell is that most of these reserves is what is called hot money. You never know when the
it's the nature of a liability.
And when the FII would want to withdraw it. And remember in 1990s, Mexico made that cardinal mistake of using this hot money for public investment in the country. The net result was when this money flew out, they had to sell all their energy resources in order to get out of their debt.
So we've not earned these reserves through exports.
And it's not real wealth.
Like China has.
It's not real wealth. There's a bubble sitting on your actual real wealth. And China, that's why I said, look at China. Even after the global meltdown, when everybody in the world was giving these bailout packages to the corporates, eventually what happened? You converted corporate insolvencies to sovereign insolvency.
You took it from corporate balance sheet to government balance sheet.
And that is exactly the problem with European Union. The country is going bankrupt because they bailed out the corporates. The United States can get away with it because the greenback, the dollar is the universal international currency. But they can get away, but nobody else can. Now, what was needed again there? that use these resources, the tax foregone, what you're giving, in spite of all the concessions you've given to boost investment and growth, your manufacturing landed at the time of the elections to minus 0.1%.
Yeah.
That was your manufacturing growth rate. So where were all these lakhs of crores of incentives going? They were going into speculation, as I said, real estate, gold, buying up foreign reserves, etc.
Absolutely.
Instead of that, collect your legitimate taxes, you invest, generate new jobs, give that purchasing power in the hands of the people. And once they start demanding, and many, many years ago, this exercise was done when we were students, I would say at least 30 years ago, that if you give enough money to every person below the poverty line to buy one dhoti or one sari, the demand for cotton textiles will be 3 times more than what it is today. Then, that means you will require 3 times many more cotton textile mills. That will employ people, that will generate jobs, etc. So that demand generation is where we should focus. Instead, you're focusing on attracting investment.
Here, coming back to the structural problem that we discussed a few minutes ago, which is of employment. Now, last week, Pranab Bardhan was in Calcutta, your city in some ways, where he lamented that the only solution to jobless growth, relatively high technology, high capital driven growth, is to have a clear cut strategy of labor intensive growth. Now, we have been talking about labor intensive growth now for decades now. Now, what do you think? I mean, what does your party think about generating labor intensive growth? What could be the way out?
Labor intensive growth, there are 2 points here we have got to understand. One is it's in the very nature of capitalist development that in order to maximize profits, you always replace labor by technology. So actually, technical progress is a coercion under capitalism. I mean, otherwise you don't maximize profits. So that is something that will happen. So there will be a constant replacement of labor by technology. Now, therefore, how do you increase labor intensivity? The only way is public funded investments in infrastructure. No, you can't. I mean, whatever be the technological levels, you require manpower to build roads, you require manpower to build dams, you require
So essentially what you're saying is that the private sector can go on the capital technology intensive path. Government can actually do investments which are more labor intensive.
Beyond that, I go to say another point. The private sector can also thrive only when the government goes on the path that we suggested. Because only then the purchasing power in the hands of the people will grow, which the private investment can feed. If there is no purchasing power, how will private capital also thrive? And they can't export, as we said. No, they can't go anywhere. So why is, let's say, capital from India, big capitalists from India, actually investing abroad? Because there's no domestic market here. You provide them a domestic market, who would want to leave the country and go? If you don't do that, and that nobody else can do except the government. So all that we are saying is, and that is our critique in this budget also, which is now going on, we are discussing in the Rajya Sabha today and tomorrow, is that for heaven's sake, collect your legitimate taxes. Nobody is saying increase the tax levels. Nobody is saying you impose
greater tax rates or whatever.
Tax rates or whatever it is. No. Whatever your existing tax rates, whatever your existing legitimate collections, collect them. Stop giving these tax incentives. Instead, use this money and do public investment. The same capitalist to whom you will give this tax incentive today, he will earn more if there are people to buy what he is producing. Why is the automobile industry sales down? Why is your consumer durable sales down in every sector? That's because the disposable income in the hands of the people is much less. So that is what we have to address.
And the other issue is, when you speak about employment, one of your economists on the left, Jayati Ghosh, once made a presentation where she argued that nearly 50% of those employed in India are actually self-employed. we haven't seen any other economy in the world going through our phase of development, which went through our phase of development in the past, developed economies, which possibly had 50% of their employed as self-employed. Now, how does the left analyze this? Is it again because of lack of labor intensity in manufacturing?
It's a lack of adequate public investments to absorb this labor. You see, 46%, I think, if the actual figures are there, are self-employed in the country. Nearly 50%. No, why are they self-employed? Because there is no better alternative. Now, if you provide them this, and that is what Rega was supposed to do. When we had initially insisted with the UPA1 government that you do this, the idea was not merely a dole.
Yeah, you had also suggested asset creation.
Exactly.
In many states, assets are being created. Right?
They're being created.
Depending on the district collector's initiative, right?
Exactly. Now, instead of the district collectors, we said where the panchayat system is working, involve the panchayats. I mean, it's happened with our experience in Bengal in many places. It's happening even today.
Yeah.
You decide from Delhi that you will build, roads, let's say.
Yeah.
That particular panchayat in that village says, for heaven's sake, we don't have drinking water. What we require is wells. So if that is a priority, why did you do that?
Yeah.
Somebody else will need embankments so that the lands are
so
not...
So you can decentralize the use of... Give different states choice of their asset creation, right?
Exactly. I know. Let them create assets which they require most.
So this will be a labor intense... This is like employment producing public investment.
Exactly.
Where asset is also getting created.
Absolutely.
On the private sector side, Mr. Yechury, I want to pick your brains on this new debate about labor reforms. Now, labor reforms is popularly understood by people as hire and fire. Now, I'm not talking about this hiring and firing policy. I'm saying that small manufacturers today are disincentivized to hire more people, labor-intensive manufacturers, people who make things which don't need big capital or technology. They don't keep hire requisite number of people on their rolls because of this Inspector Raj that exists in the comes from the Labour Department. You constant harassment of whether you have some fire equipment here or there, whether your bathroom is of this size or that. So would you, if you leave aside hire and fire policy, would you agree that labour laws need huge reform to free the small manufacturer from this Inspector Raj?
You see, the Inspector Raj operates which has nothing to do with labor.
Because big business doesn't get affected by Inspector Raj because they manage the inspectors.
That is the misfortune. But Inspector Raj doesn't affect the actual labor or the production. It only talks if your safety conditions. And now that is something, if you say that we should forsake, I wouldn't agree. Now you have a fire escape. You have a toilet. These things are necessary, that's the point. And secondly, remember, when you're talking of 94%...
But can't they be implemented through a self-certifying audit mechanism?
Absolutely.
Once in a year, somebody goes and checks.
So the solution is not labor reform. The solution is actually the administrative reform.
Administrative within labor...
within the
labor administration
area of production, industry, small industries, small manufacturing, etc. So that is where you need certain corrections. It's an administrative problem. It's not really a labor law problem.
It's not a labor law problem.
And 94% of your labor, as we talked earlier, is unorganized.
So it's a labor administration problem.
Exactly. It's a labor administration problem. So you deal with it at that level. Instead of trying to create a big divide at the outset by saying we want labor laws.
So CPM would support labor administration reforms.
Exactly. That we are, in fact, we are in the forefront, and anybody you ask, any well-meaning industrialist will tell you, they come to us and saying, please start your union. We would like to, discuss politically and the issues with the workers, rather than, have commission unions and things like that. Let's not talk about that. But that's, so the point is, we have always been talking. The only trade union in the country which has been for at least 40 years now, talking about what is called work culture, has been the CITU affiliated to us. So now that is a different area altogether. What is being projected now, labor reform means only hire and fire.
Of course, I didn't mean that at all. So that's why I clarified the
exactly. So you see, we have heard this from Narasimha Rao's time. what is called the safety net.
Safety net, yeah.
What have you created in these,
So it's more about, yeah, you're right, it's more about administration reforms.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sitaram Yechury, for talking to us. That's all we have in this edition of State of the Economy. We'll be back with you next week. Thanks for watching.